Mendeecees' Harris drama recently took a startling turn. Fans were already in awe at his previous scandals, but they were unaware of a secret affair that would destroy his family. Rumors about Mendeecees and an enigmatic lady have been circulating for months, but it wasn't until recently that they were found cheating, and the repercussions are more worse than anybody could have predicted. That the truth was revealed, and it's nothing short of a scandal. When the news surfaced, both family members and fans were in disbelief at the startling discovery. Not only was Mendeecees dishonest, but he fathered a kid in secret with the lady who has been lurking in the background. The impact from this revelation has been tremendous. Yandy Smith-Harris' wife was taken by surprise when her response to the truth was heartbreaking. But what really shocked the family was how this bombshell exposed everything they believed to be true about their falsehoods. As allegations erupted, and it seemed that no one could avoid the fallout, tensions reached an all-time high. How would Mendeecees and Yandy manage this unexpected betrayal? Would their marriage end? What about the child? Mendeecees' Harris' life just taken a drastic change, and this is a story you won't want to miss. Stay attentive since nobody knew this existed. His admirers were faced with shocking news that nobody could have predicted. The picture of love and family that men had painstakingly cultivated over the years is now in ruins. For months, there have been whispers about his personal life, but nothing have prepared anybody for the revelation that it was not just a long-hidden affair, but a secret. Mendeecees had always been able to keep his private life out of the spotlight as a youngster that no one knew about, and for the most part, he was successful because of his charisma, his commitment to his family, and his realism. He was one of the most likable people in the profession because to his TV presence. Yet below that there were the seemingly ideal family life was going to be completely upended by layers of deceit. No one could have believed that Mendeecees was keeping a secret behind closed doors that would shock the media and his intimate circle in certain circles. The affair had been a well-kept secret, but the reality didn't surface until recently. Like the public was still unaware of the woman's identity, but the narrative was rapidly coming to light. The affair was kept concealed, and the public didn't begin to make the connections until after persistent inquiries and disclosures. Fans who had previously praised Mendeecees for being loving fathers and husbands were now doubting all they believed they known about him. The first person most affected by this revelation, the treachery was more profound than anybody had anticipated, was Yandy Smith-Harris. His spouse, who had always been the epitome of elegance and strength, was caught off guard by the reality she had committed to. She formed a family with him and supported him through thick and thin in her marriage. Now she believes she knows everything. Was broken, Yandy's emotional response was unadulterated and unrefined, a combination of disbelief, rage, and grief. She had always maintained her conviction in her own purity. When Yandy initially got the news, it seemed as if her marriage was ending and her whole world was falling apart. She was unable to comprehend that her spouse, the guy she had been with, had torn away the ground under her feet. She had been keeping such a huge secret for years, and her rage was evident. Given the life they had created together, she couldn't understand how Mendeecees had hidden this from her. But there was more to the tale than a simple romance. Yandy was about to learn something far more startling than her. The fact that her spouse had fathered a kid with someone else would plague her for days. In the meanwhile, Mendeecees was attempting to remain calm. But as the controversy developed, the truth of the circumstances started to affect him as well. He had long concealed the affair and the hidden kid, but now there was no avoiding the consequences. The media craze was unrelenting. With each tabloid publication, fans who had earlier revered him were now doubting his integrity as a result of a gossip source publishing reports about the betrayal. His family was in disarray and his future was unclear, but Yandy wasn't the only one impacted. The whole family was Mendeecees' children were too little to really understand the situation, but they were in shock. They could feel the tension in the air as the news spread, and family members were split, with some siding with Mendeecees, while some supported Yandy, who felt deceived. The family was going through a lot of emotional upheaval. Everyone had to choose a side, and as the word spread like wildfire, nobody was escaping this untouched. Fans expressed a range of emotions on social media, including astonishment, and people were quick to criticize Men's behavior, while others attempted to justify him by saying that he had been despite his errors, he was a decent husband and parent. The media has always had a place. As the news of the affair and the hidden kid continues to make headlines, the more Men's world progressed, the more it seemed like everyone was at risk from the mayhem it had wrought. Yet the affair was just the tip of the iceberg. As additional information became available, it became evident that the narrative had many more levels. Men had to face the consequences and the truth of what he had done. The affair was one thing, but they were far bigger than he had ever imagined. Yandy was forced to come to terms with the fact that there was a hidden kid, which would alter everything, yet the life she had created with Men was more painful for her than the affair, and the kid wasn't only a betrayal. It represented all she believed to be true about her spouse and their union. How could Mendeecees have concealed this from her? She wondered how he could have been so reckless with their family. These thoughts persisted as she attempted to explain the destruction in the middle of this chaos. Next, it was discovered that the hidden kid was a small boy, just 5 years old. A long-hidden mother was abruptly brought to the public's attention. Both the media and her admirers started to speculate about her intentions, connection with Men, and the ways in which she had concealed the child's existence for so long. This discovery only intensified the drama when it became apparent that the romance was a long-term one rather than a passing fling. Men's, who had been the life of the party for years in a relationship now, the party and the pillar of his family's stability, had to pick up the fragments of his broken world. His relationship with Yandy was in ruins, and the trust that had previously existed between them was crumbling. Between them had been shattered, and it seemed that there was no way to recover. The family was formerly quite close, was now irreparably broken, with Yandy and Mendeecees at odds, and everyone in their vicinity had to choose a side, and the drama was far from ended. As the days passed, the tension only increased as accusations and feelings were exchanged. Running high, the husband and wife's once unbreakable closeness now seemed, to the aftermath from NBC's dishonesty, replaced a faraway memory with a harsh reality that none of them had anticipated. Controversy was just getting started. The public was closely watching, and that there was no denying the emotional toll on all parties. What would occur next? Mendeecees and Yandy overcame this treachery, or was their marriage meant to fail? These are the issues that need to be answered. Were yet unknown, but there was little doubt that this play was far from over. The terrible incident at Mendeecees continued to unfold at an alarming rate, and the twists were just getting started. As time went on, more information surfaced, each more astounding than the last. Yandy's emotional condition was deteriorating every hour. Men's marriage, which had previously been wonderful, was now on the verge of disintegrating. He attempted to repair what remained of his damaged reputation while stuck in a tornado of sorrow, but the damage appeared. Yandy's once irrevocable image of power and elegance was now clearly shattered. Her voice broke with anguish each time she spoke about the affair. A profound melancholy was gradually replacing the rage that had first flared within of her, and she was unable to ponder how her life had devolved. How had she failed to see the warning signals? And how had her husband, whom she had trusted, in the worst manner imaginable, her heart and soul betrayed her? Their confidence was no longer there, and Yandy had to confront the agonizing fact that she couldn't. Yandy would cry in solitude, unable to repair what had been done. Manage the influx of feelings that overcame her. She had experienced a lot with Men, and now it seemed like, despite the sorrow, Yandy understood she had to make a choice about the collapsing things they had created together. Future of her marriage, it was terrible to consider leaving all she had known, yet remaining in it. In the meanwhile, a marriage based on deception and treachery looked just as intolerable. Nan was experiencing intense inner turmoil and had attempted to suppress it all together, but the consequences of his behavior were gradually destroying him. He never thought his affair would come to light in a manner that was so dramatic that what he had believed to be a secret was suddenly going out of control. And the harm he had inflicted could not be undone. The disclosure of the Mendeecees had attempted to defend his conduct, but his hidden kid just made matters worse. But every time he glanced, he couldn't help but notice that his kid was seeing someone else. He was reminded of the disaster he had made by his kids. How could he ever be able to explain to them how he could confront his family after he had betrayed their faith in Mendeecees? Was not only coping with his wife's criticism, but he was also his mother, who had always been a pillar of support in his life, was affected by his brought up men to be honest and trustworthy, and she was clearly disappointed. Who would never betray his loved ones? But now she was wondering what her son had become into. There was a lot of quiet and unsaid words in their difficult interactions, because, in her opinion, he had passed a boundary that men could never cross. His mother was at a loss for words. Mendeecees attempted to cope with the craziness of the situation, and those who had previously supported him began to scrutinize him even harder, started to turn against him, and those who felt deceived posted comments, memes, and responses all over social media. Many of his supporters were shocked by his behavior and found it impossible to reconcile the guy they had revered with the one they were now witnessing. Some criticized him right once, while others attempted to justify him by saying that everyone makes mistakes, errors, but no amount of protection could prepare him for the terrible truth that his marriage was in danger of fall. The mother of Mendeecees' hidden kid intervened in the middle of it. Into the public eye, she had concealed her identity for years, but now that the media pursued her, anxious to learn the truth, since she was unwilling to stay in the shadows any longer. Her tale is similar to Mendeecees in every way, including the kids she had with Mendy, and their love was complicated and full with drama. The mystery lady, whose identity had, after years of being kept under wraps, she eventually came out as Samantha. And Samantha was familiar with the reality TV industry. She had participated in long before he had even started dating Yandy. Mendeecees' connection with him had been a secret from the beginning, and their emotional connection was indisputable. Yet Samantha had always avoided the spotlight and avoided pursuing notoriety or attention. But now that the kid was involved, she was forced to express her feelings, and Samantha's emotional toll was she had liked Mendeecees. And even though she had known that she was exactly as hefty as Yandy, she never thought their relationship's issues would reach this point, where the public is now. She didn't want the attention, but it was obvious that she and her kid were at the focus of a media frenzy. Would have to confront it head on. She was forced to take center stage and respond to inquiries she never wanted to. Samantha was overcome by the emotional burden of being revealed for something that had been so private, yet she felt powerless. But to be honest, when the media persisted in demanding answers from males in Washington, D.C.'s his marriage was disintegrating, his reputation was in ruins, and the world was collapsing, shattered, and the situation's emotional burden was weighing on him in ways he had never expected. The drama concerning his affair and the hidden kid, things were only getting worse, and there didn't appear to be any end in sight. Although Yandy was a strong woman, she was having trouble adjusting to a world that had been completely upended. She discovered that even the strongest person can only handle so much before they crumble. Her family was in disarray, doubting everything, including her marriage, decisions, and future. Will she be able to move on from this terrible betrayal if she forgives Mendeecees for what he did? Or was this concludes their tale, while the drama continues to play out Mink's future? Yandy's marriage was still in doubt. Was there any chance of a reconciliation? There was a noticeable tension between them, and neither of them appeared eager to back down. Was this the beginning of the end? Down, since everyone was seeing them, it seemed that only time would tell whether Minx and Yandy would ever manage to go on. The situation was starting to weigh hard on all parties concerned. Means, despite his attempts to preserve what remained of his private life, he ended up slipping farther into sorrow. The public scrutiny and his wife's and family's treachery were having a negative impact on his mental and emotional well-being. He had always taken great satisfaction in being a devoted spouse and parent, but it seemed like he was losing everything he had put so much effort into creating. Yandy Han was confronted with the devastating truth that her life as she had knew it was finished. The psychological effects of she couldn't handle Mime's affair and the secret kid. Her once solid marriage was now in ruins, and every day seemed like a struggle as she picked up the pieces after being abandoned. Struggled with the humiliation of betrayal, the public display that was taking place, and the pressure to decide regarding her future at a time when Minx and Yandy's emotional dispute was coming to a breaking point. The circumstances were also impacting the dynamics of their larger family. Although they were too young to really comprehend, Mendeecees' children were starting to grasp the seriousness of the situation. What had transpired? But Yandy, who had always been a mother, could not be ignored due to the stress in their family. Figure to Mendeecees' children, she now couldn't help but wonder what type of future they would have, played a role in their lives after all that had transpired, and how would they handle the abrupt shift? Men's world, as if the emotional toll wasn't enough in their family dynamic, was becoming more erratic. Samantha, his hidden child's mother, was suddenly completely in the spotlight, and the media was pursuing her nonstop after she had been silent for years. However, because the truth had been revealed, she was forced to express her opinions. The media frenzy around her was fierce, and every element of her life was being examined for public consumption. The never-ending barrage of inquiries, and despite the numerous charges, Samantha was steadfast in her determination to shield herself and her infant from more investigation, revealed Mendeecees' frantic attempt to take back control of the issue. Out to Samantha, he was aware that if he couldn't figure out how to deal with the consequences of his things would become even more out of hand. Hidden kid. He never thought his life would get to this point, but he had to choose how to put things right immediately, and his talks with Samantha were heated and full of unspoken annoyance and perplexity. He had deceived Samantha and Yandy, and it seemed like the catastrophe he had created for Samantha could not be cleaned up. She had always kept her connection with guys in DC under wraps, so she was having trouble adjusting to the sudden attention. Wraps without ever wanting attention, but now she was forced to participate. Of the public display, the press demanded explanations, and the pressure was increasing on to provide for them. But Samantha refused to let the media to control her life, since she understood that the most important thing was she was defending her kid and would not allow anybody to exploit him as a prop in their play. She was resolved to be strong and defend her family in spite of the turmoil, but the drama didn't end there. Mendeecees attempted in order to get through the storm. Yandy discovered a fresh twist. After struggling with her feelings, she ultimately made the decision to take charge of the circumstance. She had been silent for a long time, but suddenly Yandy had always been a warrior, and she was prepared to speak her mind. With the media observing her, ready to let Mendeecees' treachery to define her life, Yandy convened a news conference to provide her side of the story at every turn. For the first time, Yandy's news conference was a crucial point in the story. Although clearly moved, she addressed the camera directly, describing the suffering, and she discussed the years she had spent feeling betrayed after learning about Mendeecees' affair and the presence of his hidden kid. Much trust and love she had put into her marriage, only to have it destroyed by her husband's behavior, the unadulterated feeling after the press conference. A large number of Yandy's supporters voiced their support for her. However, Yandy acknowledged the public backlash from Mendeecees' conduct in addition to her own sentiments, and the impact it had on their family. She was certain that neither she nor her kids would allow this to define who they were. Prospects, she was resolved to put the drama aside and concentrate on what was best for Yandy's press appearance with her family was a powerful moment of empowerment, and it sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. And Men was still in awe at Yandy's public declaration. Had intended to save their relationship behind closed doors, but now that it was all public knowledge, he realized Yandy had drawn a line in the sand, and it was obvious that she would not back down. There was no turning back. Men were now compelled to face the consequences of his behavior. There was no longer making excuses or attempting to save his reputation. The truth has surfaced, and facing the repercussions was the only option. Naturally, the media had a field day with the press. Yandy's heartfelt remark made headlines during the conference, and fans filled social media with their reactions. While some praised Yandy for speaking out, others chastised her for sharing her private struggle with the world. Though there were differing views, the drama between Mendeecees Yandy and the hidden kid was evident, was far from over, and when the dust settled, Mendeecees was forced to consider he had made a mess. His marriage was in ruins, and his reputation was in ruins, and it was evident that he had taken a toll on everyone's emotions. Made a mistake and now had to deal with the fallout, but was there any chance that he could ever undo the harm? Preserve his relationship with Yandy? The tension kept rising and the questions remained unsolved. Drama continued, and if there was a path to salvation, it would not be an easy one for Mendeecees. His image was damaged, his family was split up, and Yandy had made it plain that she would not tolerate his infidelity, and his marriage was on the verge of disintegrating. Readily, and Mendeecees were aware that if he wanted to, he had a long path ahead of him. Fans were left on the edge of their seats as the saga continued to reconstruct what he had lost, waiting impatiently for the next installment of this gripping tale. What might Mendeecees do next? To make amends with Yandy? Or was their marriage destined to fail? There was a noticeable sense of anxiety, and the next turn in this emotional roller coaster seemed certain to come soon. Mendeecees Yandy and the secret child's emotional drama persisted. To develop with no indications of a settlement in sight, the couple's tension had approached a breaking point, and the media was always watching for the next shocking development. Despite her outward show of resilience, Yandy was still dealing with the intense hurt caused by Mendeecees' treachery. Always upheld the value of family, but it seemed as if everything in her life was falling apart right now. Mendeecees, however, he was having difficulty making apologies. He had quietly and publicly apologized, pleaded for forgiveness, and even went to therapy to try to mend the harm, but to no avail. Yandy had changed from the person he had known to someone stronger, more determined, and she was adamant about protecting herself and her kids, and the love they had felt like a faraway memory. Despite all of his efforts, Mendeecees had to accept the possibility that he could have lost her forever. Yandy's rage, she had given men all she had, and the pain was too great to be easily erased. Trust her devotion and affection, but that trust had now been completely destroyed. Repair, she was unable to ignore the betrayal she had been experiencing. The once unbreakable relationship between they had been cut off, and Yandy had made the agonizing choice to go. She wasn't prepared to give up her pleasure for the sake of Mendeecees, since there was no turning back from the harm they had inflicted. A failed marriage, Yandy's determination increased when she separated from male Mendeecees. Stronger, she was battling for her children, not just herself, and she had to defend them from the poisonous atmosphere that Mendeecees' activities had produced. The ongoing drama that the public, everyone in their family, was suffering from the attention and the emotional upheaval, and Yandy was aware that if she didn't, taking a stance would do extensive harm. She was finished being a victim of the controversy that had engulfed her. Life in the meanwhile, Mendeecees was forced to confront the terrible truth of his circumstances. He had done all he could, but his own choices had completely upended his life, and now he was suffering the consequences. Ideas to put things right, but nothing seemed to succeed. The relationships were broken and the public humiliated. Additionally, the unrelenting media attention was too much to handle. He had turned into the antagonist in a tale he never meant to. Join the guy who was once respected was now a warning about how, amidst all of this, Samantha, the mother of Men's hidden kid, discovered that one misstep may ruin everything. Herself dealing with her own difficulties, the media had been unrelenting in their investigation, examining every facet of. They were curious about every detail of her life, including her relationship with Mendeecees. Samantha has always maintained her distance due to the circumstances surrounding their romance and her bond with the kid. Escaped the spotlight, but now she had to deal with it. The pressure was too much, but she was resolved to shield her kid from the turmoil that had entered their life. Samantha's attachment to Mendeecees had always been difficult, and they had a secret love that had developed behind closed doors. However, suddenly Samantha had to face the fact that she was in the midst of a very public situation with everything in the open. drama, she felt compelled to participate in the spectacle, even though she had never wanted to. Samantha understood that her kid had to be her first priority in order to handle the media craze that surrounded her, and her youngster was more concerned with ensuring her child's safety and protection than she was with popularity or attention. However, she felt confined in a scenario she never requested as the media pressed her for answers. She was a mother, and her only goal was to provide her kid a secure, caring environment, which suddenly looked more difficult to do given the tumult around her. Mendeecees, in his attempting to contact Samantha in his own quest for atonement, he discovered that he couldn't make things right with Yandy, but maybe he could work things out with his child's mother. He would express regret for what he had done, acknowledge that he had made a serious error, and declare that he was prepared to go to any lengths to make amends for their son. But Samantha was unable to forgive him in spite of her own mental struggles, had seen enough, and she refused to let Mendeecees return to their life just because he was seeking atonement. She wasn't going to allow men to ruin her son's future. Their lives are defined by VC's faults. The emotional distance between VC and his Yandy had made it apparent that their marriage was gone. And despite the fact that Mendeecees continued, no amount of apology appeared to be enough to repair the harm he had done to his relationship with Samantha. Was similarly tense because, after all the harm he had done to her, she was hesitant to let him back into her life. Had lost two significant ladies in his life, and he was now compelled to acknowledge that his actions had much more repercussions than he could have predicted. But as the days passed, a new chapter in the story that had before appeared to consume all of your time started to emerge, was beginning to loosen its hold on those concerned. Yandy, who was still very distressed, she started to reconstruct her life, concentrating on her kids and her own mental health. She had discovered strength in her friends and family support, and while though the wounds from the betrayal would never completely heal, she was figuring out how to proceed, and Mendeecees was beginning to understand that salvation wasn't something that could be obtained quickly. It would need patience, and he would need to demonstrate that his path to salvation had been really altered, would be protracted and challenging. But for the first time in months, he was starting to realize how serious the issue was. He had produced a tremendous emotional toll on all parties concerned, but the process of mending had started, and Samantha stayed true to her dedication to shielding her children. The media craze would soon subside, but her would always play a part in Mendeecees' narrative. She didn't care about the drama. She just wanted the best interests of her kid, yet the concerns persisted. Would Mendeecees and Yandy ever get back together? Opportunity for them to mend their broken marriage and what their family's future might include would so. There were many emotional wounds to heal, and although the solutions were ambiguous, one thing was certain. This epic story was far from ended, and as it developed, viewers were left anticipating the next chapter with bated breath, wondering what would happen next in this roller coaster of family turmoil, betrayal, and redemption. Only time will tell, but the voyage was far from done, with the dramatic turns of the drama yet to come. And the emotional struggle is far from done. What do you think Mendeecees, Yandy, and their families will do next? Is there a chance for a reconciliation, or has Mendeecees been able to regain Yandy's trust? Their marriage was completely destroyed by this incident. Please share your ideas in the comments section below. If you're following this crazy roller coaster of drama and treachery, don't forget to press the like button. Subscribe to remain up to date, informed of all the most recent developments in this story. We'll provide you with additional information as soon as it becomes available. Make sure to activate your alerts so you don't miss any of the next bombshell revelations. We would want to know whether you believe that male venture capitalists can turn things around, or if it is too late for them to speak out. Comments, and let's continue this discussion. Stay tuned for more exciting tales like